Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, regardless of what part of the world you're in. The USA Global TV and Radio Network is truly a global TV station, TV show. I'm red.olaughlin. I'm the host here today on The Wise Ones. And my guest today is Jennifer Shaw. She's an adventure fantasy writer, and we're going to get into who Jennifer is, her books, and what's planned for the future. So with that, Jennifer, please join me.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I understand you're a Canadian. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm a small town near Calgary, Alberta, Canada. It's Airdrie. It's about 20 minutes north of Calgary.
And when did you start writing?
I started writing 32 years ago. I needed a hobby.
Wow.
Or needed an outlet. It became an outlet for me, then turned into a hobby, later became an obsession, a passion, and now it's just cheaper than therapy.
Okay. So with this therapy beginning 3 decades ago, how did it actually develop into I'm writing a book? Or did you start writing a book and then change it? Or give us a little bit of the genesis of the books that you have right now.
Okay, so I've been kind of writing, like I said, since I was little. And I kind of had the idea of what if fairy tales were more than stories, monsters were flesh and blood, and we just didn't know it. So I kind of ran with this idea for this series. But I'd never actually shared any books until 2019. I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and I thought maybe this is my special interest because I've written hundreds of stories. So I got brave and I sent my manuscript for my first book to an editor thinking, okay, the worst they can say is it sucks. And they came back and they said, this doesn't suck, you should publish. So 2 years later, I did.
Just in time for COVID, huh?
Yes.
Okay, so you came up with this fantasy world. Tell us a little bit about how you were describing it to me in backstage. You came up with this world where you started creating figures that may or may not be human or may not, whatever. So I'm going to let you continue that story so people can get an idea of how your books are the genre of your books and how they flow.
Okay. Yeah. So my genre that I write in, it's very much a magical fantasy adventure. I've got some action adventure because I get bored really easy. So I like to be entertained. And I also have a lot of supernatural and suspense elements kind of sprinkled throughout. I've drawn my inspiration from like the Merlin tales, but I've always been a big fan also of the Supernatural TV series and the Game of Thrones and kind of entwine those in there. At the same time, putting wholesome messages into my writing as well.
Are your characters consistent throughout the books?
I strive very hard for them to be consistent. I have a background interest in psychology, and I've worked really hard to have my characters with depth and their motivations. And each one of my magical races, they have their own religions, traditions, political systems. I've tried to go back to the original mythology wherever I could as well.
Now, you said you were diagnosed with autism or ADHD or whatever. What prompted all that? Were something going in a different direction in your world and you just needed some help? Or because doesn't that usually occur much earlier in life?
It does usually. I was diagnosed following my son's diagnosis, and he was going through this assessment. It's called the ADOS assessment. And all the things that they were asking questions about and flagging as red flags. I'm like, I've done those my whole life. So following his diagnosis, I was assessed myself under the ADOS assessment and come to find out that I have autism and ADHD.
Well, that's kind of interesting. You're trying to evaluate somebody else and you're evaluating yourself at the same time.
Yes.
When you wrote your first book, how long did that take?
The rough draft for my first book took me about 2.5 months. The editing takes 3 times longer at least. And because it was my first book, I had that one edited a whole lot more because I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing.
And did you hire a developmental editor or some other people help you? How did that process go where you're developing characters and locations and continuity and everything?
Yeah, no, I hired an editor. I think you get kind of so in depth into your story that you kind of lose track of your writing. And so I've also wanted to work with editors who would teach me the mechanics of writing so that I could become a better writer as well. So yes, there's a developmental edit, then there's a copy line edit, there's a proofread and all that stuff that goes along with it.
So it took a couple, 3 months to write the rough draft, almost a year to get the book into printable stage. And then you decided to publish. And when did you start marketing your book?
I started marketing my book probably the fall of 2023 is when I started to market it. By that time, I had published my first book because that came out in 2021. My second book came out in 2022, and my third book was almost ready to be released at that point. I'm not a marketer. I'm a mom.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay. So the books are written and you got a little late start on the marketing. How did you, what avenues did you decide to put your adventure books into? You know, like Instagram or Facebook or social media or email, or tell us a little bit about the marketing process itself that you developed after the books were written.
Yeah, so I've been working to try to understand how to build a presence on Instagram, on Facebook. I try not to think about it as marketing because I don't know, that to me that's scary. That's a big word. It's really scary. So I try to think about it as how do I show the world that I exist? My books are consigned in Indigos. I got my books consigned in the Indigo and Chapters location, and they're kind of like the Barnes and Noble of Canada. Once they're in one store, they're uploaded to all of their systems. So you can go to anywhere in Canada and do book signings. So I've done a lot of book signings. I've also done, I did an RPG-a-thon convention this year. And next year I'm going to be doing expos and Comic-Cons. But I've also got my books in some libraries as well. And I found word of mouth is a pretty powerful tool.
Would you like to read a little bit about your book so that we get a flavor for your style of writing?
Yeah, I can read to you from the synopsis for the description for my first book. It's a magical war is brewing. While humankind is blissfully unaware, 2 evil brothers, a sorcerer and a necromancer, are marshaling deadly supernatural forces and armies of mythical creatures in a bid to destroy one another. The triumphant warlord will be free to impose their dominion over Earth's natural world and a coexisting magical realm concealed from human knowledge behind an ethereal veil. Meanwhile, Callum Walker is an introverted young man, born with gifts that he struggles to understand. As monsters begin wreaking havoc in his city, Callum is compelled to use his unmastered arcane abilities to combat the growing menace. Unfortunately, the scheming warlords notice his vigilante escapades and both see Callum as a potential threat. While coming to terms with his extraordinary powers, Callum discovers a hidden world of magic and a cryptic prophecy that proclaims he will end the warfare now breaching the veil. However, Callum soon finds himself pursued by the agents of both factions, plus those seeking personal sanctuary or offering to help. Ultimately, Callum Walker must overcome his fears and doubts if he hopes to survive, let alone bring the conflict to an end.
Many of us authors are also readers of other books. I love historical fiction. I love a lot of things, but you have a lineage of books that you've read that kind of, wow, I could use, that kind of develops a thought in your head. I'd like to take and explore that one in even more detail. What are some of the books that you've read that have influenced you?
Yeah. So I
So if you had to compare yourself to, you mentioned earlier Merlin and a movie series, I can't think of the name of it right now,
Yeah.
King of Thrones. How do your books compare to those?
So I've drawn elements. I'm very much, I like the, and through the Game of Thrones series, I was reading that. I liked that there was a lot of political stuff that was brought in. It wasn't, there was a bit more than I was used to, but I liked that idea that everybody is kind of connected in such a way. I've also, I'm a big fan of the Supernatural TV series, and I liked that, unlikely heroes fighting the good fight, those kind of things. And then the Merlin tales, nobody starts out as being an expert magician. So you have to start from somewhere. I grew up reading, my mom was an English major, so I grew up reading like the Emily Bronte, Thomas Hardy, Joseph Conrad, and lots of Shakespeare and stuff. So that's where my early reading came from. It was very boring, but there was a lot of elements that I found interesting. I also read the Odd Thomas series by Dean Koontz, which gave me a lot of inspiration for my unlikely hero for Callum Walker.
Okay, so you have your characters. Do you have little images of them so that when you're developing their text for your book, that you can look up there and almost see that person speaking to you?
I tried that, but I found it very distracting. Some of my characters, I do have to pull up pictures and just kind of get an idea of what to describe. But I really just picture them in my head.
Okay. And how do you put your mindset to the one of an unmastered magician in development?
I kind of envision, how would I feel if I was in that position? When I'm writing my books, I envision them as a movie reel in my head, and I feel like I'm just writing what I see as I'm along for the ride. There's times when I'm in the zone and I didn't know where I'm going with this, and I feel like I'm, literally along for the ride. And I'll go to amazing ideas. Oh, I didn't think. Well, how did I think of that? And other places I have to stop and question my sanity.
I brought something a couple of months ago. One of the things I was reading about Hemingway, and one of his words of advice, I think it was like five pieces of advice Hemingway would give writers today. And one of them I really liked a lot. It was never finish writing the end of the paragraph, the chapter, always hold that for tomorrow. And the reason he said that is if you finish the chapter or that segment, all of a sudden now your mind is open and you have to think of how am I going to start the next one? But if you
Yes.
come back tomorrow, you already know how it ends. It may only be a couple of paragraphs, but you're already there. You don't have to worry about it. But it also allows the brain to fill in other gaps that you may not have been thinking about to lead on into the next one. And I'm a nonfiction writer. And to me, that makes all the sense in the world, because I've had many times where, okay, I finished this one. And okay, I know it's tomorrow, the next day. And where do I go? But for a novel, that to me, I think makes a whole lot more sense, because all the action's there. It's just getting ready to accumulate, boom. And if I finish it, maybe my brain's going to shut down. I don't know. But does that make sense to you from the kind of writing that you do?
It does. I have a little bit of a different process. I try to finish because my brain is very linear. I can't stop in the middle of a chapter. Just like if I'm reading something, I can't stop in the middle of a chapter. I finish the chapter. I know where it's going to begin, the middle, and the end, just like I know with all my stories, because I'm not a big planner, but I know approximately what needs to happen. But I finish it. I put it away. Before I start the next chapter, I will get out that chapter and read through it again, because there's also ideas that come to me as I go, and I'll write those down and fit those in the next time I open it up.
Okay. So somebody reading your books, the character in this book, this one, and this one could be pretty darn close to each other because of your ability to keep that brain focused on everything's there. And maybe that's part of that ADHD that allows you that extra special gift to keep that consistency.
Yeah. I know that I had written my first book when I brought it out when I had it edited. There were some things that the editor had suggested, changes that needed to be made. And I had to go back after writing several books in the series. I had to go back and write in 2 chapters. So I had to switch my brain back into that first book because my character changes as time goes on. They grow and they develop and they learn. So I had to go back into that mindset of my first book. And I found it very easy because I'm so in tune to the character.
Okay. Is there a time frame? Is this in the future or just generic time frame that we're talking about? Because you're talking about humans and monsters and other things. So is there something that hasn't happened yet, or is this more of a historical thing?
No, this is sort of like our time, our world, and it there's our side of the veil is very much now. On the other side of the veil in the magical realm, they don't need technology. It's very medieval type.
Okay. And with regard to the veil, so to speak, the location, is it more like the Alberta, Canada, Calvary, Miami Beach? What kind of locations are your stories set at?
So I've not really said exactly where it is, but if you read and you look at some of the trees and the wildlife and the flora and fauna, you'll figure out it's pretty northwestern America in
Okay.
BC kind of thing. I've grew up in BC, so I'm very partial to the forests and the mountains.
Okay. So in your travels around, a lot of what you see that you love gets incorporated into your books. Is that true?
Yes, and I'm very much a lover of nature, and I like my family's those Celtic roots that I come from, which are very branches off into like Viking and Norse as well. And I try to incorporate those into my magical realm.
How many total characters do you actively take from one book to the next?
Oh my goodness. It varies from book to book. I give characters, even characters that don't have, they don't continue or you just meet them once, they still have, if they have any relevance, I still give them a name. But there are some characters that carry through my series. Well, obviously my protagonist, Callum, but then in the third book, I introduced a secondary main character, Jax. And so he carries through from that time on as well.
Okay, you say the fourth book will be out in 2025. Is that correct?
Yes, early 2025. Yeah.
And then this is a series. So book 5 and book 6 and book 7 are somewhere in the back of your brain.
Yeah, I'm starting on book 5 as we speak. I know there's a book 6. I don't know. I know where the series is going to end. I just don't know exactly how many books it's going to take to get there. But I will have a better idea once I get past the next couple books.
Okay, you started out behind the power curve with the marketing. The books are
Mhm.
written. Now you're full-fledged into marketing. When did you decide you needed a publicist?
Um, I think I started at the beginning of September, and I was talking to another author because there's only so much I can do. I don't know. I don't know how to do marketing. Like I said, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I write for fun, but it's not my repertoire. And so I was feeling like, okay, there's a ceiling that I can't do book signings every single weekend for the rest of my life. I need to kind of figure out some other way of telling the world that I exist, just other than word of mouth. And setting goals for myself is great, but at some point I'm going to reach a ceiling. So it made sense to me. And then I met another author and met my publicist through her. And it's kind of been interesting. I've been doing this in September now. So
Okay, now your books are in ebook and paperback. Do you have hardcover books also?
I don't. It's being in
How
Canada,
about
it's a little
audio?
bit. I've been requested to put my books on audio. I'm looking into it, trying to figure it out. All of this is, all of this I have to learn from scratch. But I've had enough people requesting audiobooks that I am looking into it.
Okay, so not enough requests yet for hardcover books.
It's just a little bit until they open up printers to make it easier for Canadians to print hardcover books. It'll be through Amazon. It'll be a wait still.
Okay. I wasn't aware because I know from Amazon here in the States, I can have hardcovers done, certain
Yes.
restrictions, but generally speaking, a whole lot different than it was 2, 3 years ago.
Yes.
But Ingram Sparks and others have those options. So, but now you're the author, have a publicist, you're marketing, you're developing new books.
Yep.
When did J.M. Shaw, the business owner, develop?
I think 2021 when I published my first book. That's when I took on this, this name. I thought as soon as I pressed that publish button, I'm like, I am a published author. And I started thinking about myself as being an author, published, and sharing my work with the world.
Okay, now you have ADHD and a touch of autism in there.
Yes.
How is that affecting your writing world?
I think it's I've always thought about it as a benefit. I see the world differently, I think. I have always pondered scenarios of what if this, what if that. And like I said, the entire series for this started with the question of what if fairy tales were more than stories and the monsters were flesh and blood? We just didn't know it. And I just kind of ran with that. But I've done that since as far back as I can remember. And then just sort of play through scenarios as videos in my head and imagine. My imagination is crazy. Like I said, it'll take me places where I'm wondering what is wrong with me, kind of questioning my sanity. But I'm very much a people watcher because I could never figure out. I felt like I was missing something in understanding other people, and the whole arc of my book, where my character is trying to figure out where he fits in because he's too human for our world and too magical for our world and too human for the other side, the magical realm. Somebody pointed out to me, it's like, well, that kind of mirrors your journey and trying to figure out how you fit into this grand scheme of society. And I was like, oh, it totally is. So I guess I am writing. It's my story I'm writing.
Okay, let's talk about your titles and your book covers.
Okay.
How did you come up with the titles, and how did the book cover convey that kind of book to the casual looker in a bookstore?
Well, my character is very much a traveler, so it made sense that I would have my character walking away on a journey. As for the titles, so the first book is The Ascension. It has a dual meaning. It means like rising up, but it also means like coming into being and learning about himself. Whereas the Convergence is the meeting of two things. And there was events that were happening in the characters' lives that were coming together. So it had a dual meaning as well. The third book, The Fractured Veil, it talks about the veil being damaged by something that happened in the second book, but it also refers to my character because by this time my poor character has been through a lot and they're suffering from some post-traumatic stress. So they also have to go through some serious trauma in the third book that kind of fractures them a little bit. So my fourth book that's coming out is going to be The Forsaken Souls, and it also has dual meaning as well, but I won't go into that too much right yet.
Okay, so it's the same basic book cover, but the only thing that really changes other than title is the color.
A little bit. There's a little bit of change in the design. So it's still my character walking away. So the first one, it's kind of just, looking into the distance. Whereas the second one, he spent a lot of time walking through the forest and the woods and nature. And the third one is just more confidence that he's building, but also too, there's more danger. So I thought that color and the sort of aura of magic in the background is a little bit indicative of that danger.
Are any of your characters people you know or people in the family?
No, I think that would be very hard to write somebody I actually know, especially if I have to kill off a character. That would just be heart-wrenching. But they do have elements of people's personalities that I know. And there's a lot of elements of my personalities in a lot of my characters.
Yeah, we had an author on just recently, a couple, 3, 4 episodes back, and her husband was basically one of the characters, and she used a lot of his traits as part of the character in the books, and very proud of it because of everything that worked out there. What kind of lessons would you tell a new, let's say, adventure writer, fiction? What did you learn that you can share with somebody else as a lesson learned?
Persistence is very, very important. It's important because you're not going to please everybody, but you need to write the story that's coming from your heart and not try to please everybody. There's going to be people that like it. There's going to be people that don't. I wouldn't worry too much about what people like or don't like. If you write a story from your heart, the readers will see that, and you're being true to yourself in that as well.
How much time a day, a week, do you actually spend actively writing?
Oh, I'd say probably about 3 or 4 hours a day, maybe, sometimes longer. I can hyper focus and sit down when the sun comes up, and then by the time I stand up, the sun is setting and I haven't noticed an entire day's gone. Doesn't happen very often, but yeah, that's some of the disadvantages, I suppose, of autism and ADHD is the hyper focus, and there could be a tornado ripping through my backyard and I wouldn't notice.
Okay, of the writing you're doing, how much of it is going back and editing something you've already done to make it better, or actually plot development and continuation of the story?
Oh, I think it's 50-50. I mean, so I have a process where I write through a chapter. I'm trying really hard not to edit, and just the first pass through is just write down all my ideas, make notes on the side if I want to change something, and then put it away for that day, come back to it the next day, and then try to look at it from an editing standpoint.
With the monsters and the magic and everything else, have you had any characters who were killed and came back to life again?
Oh, no, no, I think that's cheesy. Sorry. I mean, some people do that, then that's fine. It works for their stories, but for me, death is permanent. So otherwise there's no danger element. There's no risk if you can come back.
Almost sounds like a book title. Death is permanent.
Yes.
So, okay, so you're you're a business owner because you're an author. You're
Mhm.
publishing books. You're marketing books. Or you're having people market them for you. You're showing up on shows like this one. What do you enjoy the most out of being a published author?
I really enjoy book signings. I really enjoy talking to people. I tell, I'm sharing my passion is what it is. And I enjoy also being creative and creating something new. I dread the day when it, doesn't become a passion for me and it becomes more of a, oh, this is something I have to do. This is work. When it becomes that, I have to step away and go do something else because I'm not gonna have the same creative, muse going into it. But I really like talking to people and finding out what they like to read.
I'm not as familiar as I probably should be with ADHD and autism, but is this something that cycles through and some days you're far better than others, or is this
Mhm.
something that's fairly consistent, low level? How does that affect your non-writing life?
Um, yeah, there's some days that are better than others. There's a lot of anxiety and I have a lot of like OCD tendencies and stuff. And I have two very busy boys that are very loud, and I have sound sensory issues. So I get very overwhelmed. And it's a struggle. And writing has kind of been that escapism for me. When I become oversensitized to the world and everything that's happening, it's been my gift to myself, my self care and such.
How old are your boys?
My oldest is 10, my youngest is 8.
Great ages, absolutely
Yes.
great ages. They are soon to be teenagers, and the world changes just a little
Oh,
bit.
that's frightening to think. They'll be driving
Oh,
in what, like 5 years? My oldest will be
oh,
driving.
it's almost scary, isn't it?
Yes. I know my
Almost as
8-year-old
scary.
says he's got a girlfriend now, and I'm like, "Well, I don't think it's real, but I don't remember dating in my youth until I was 18, so."
This world changes so much. Do you
Mm.
use any AI at all in anything you do? Artificial
I don't even know
intelligence?
I'm not very computer literate. I wouldn't even know how to use it. I hired somebody to do my covers, so if she uses AI to do some of the covers, I have no idea. But I don't try to use any AI. I write out everything. I send it to my editor, and they read through everything, and they're not using AI. So, I mean, I just figured out how to schedule social media posts last couple weeks ago. So,
I've used it in proofreading in
Mhm,
order to say I want this proofread for seventh grade level. So I
mhm,
have my intellectual property, but I use AI as a tool, just like a spell checker. And
mm,
sometimes my words get carried away or too long or too ambiguous or whatever. And I find that helps a lot for me in that particular regard. Again, I write nonfiction. When you
yeah.
start getting involved with magic and potions and monsters and everything else, I'm sure there's all sorts of weird spellings and words we don't always run across on our normal vocabulary. So, do
Yes.
you create some words for things that are going on?
Yes, I create, so the names of some of my fantasy creatures, I've gone to a website that helps me to generate just random names, I guess. I guess that would be maybe that's considered AI. And I pick through those and see, okay, I think I could remember to spell that one. But then there's some where I'm just like, yeah, you know what? I think this character should be Frey. That's a good name for a little tiny fairy. So it just depends. I've also got a big list of baby names, old fashioned Scottish and Irish baby names and Old English names that I draw from as well.
Okay, so Callum Walker. How
Yes.
did that name develop? Is that
That was
somebody
on
you
my
know?
No, it was a list of it was on my list of baby names. And my husband didn't like it. And so because I was like, if we have a boy, I'd like to name him Callum. And my husband did not like that name. We went with Morgan and Avery instead. Those are my boys' names. But I really wanted to use that name. So I created this character with that name.
Well, actually, you have a son named Callum because he's a character in your book that you keep writing about, and he's
Yes. Well,
growing and developing year after year.
well, I know I had somebody ask me, it's like, because I have now 3 books published, and they say, "Oh, which one's the best one?" And I'm like, "It's like asking me to choose between my children." You know, you can't do that. You can't ask that. But so I guess in a way it is kind of is my creation and my artwork kind of like my child.
Okay, from my personal perspective, do you get more writing done in the winter up there in British Columbia, or is it something that you need the snow being gone where you can go out and get some fresh air and sunshine?
Every season gives me different inspirations. Winter's kind of one of those inspiring ones. But as soon as the leaves start to change color in like August, September, that's when I really start to feel inspired to create and write. When spring and summer hits, I want to be outside. We don't get very long summers up here. So as soon as the sun is out, I want to go hiking and biking and running and being outside. I don't want to be stuck indoors writing.
Uh, what's the best vacation you've ever been on?
My husband and I took our very first vacation as just without the kids this summer, and we went to San Francisco. We'd never
Oh, wow.
been anywhere. I think the most we'd ever done is one weekend at Fantasyland Hotel with the kids, and it was not very fun because they're very wild and they don't like to sleep. And yeah, it was very tiring. But this was the first time away for a week without the kids. Yeah.
Okay, so when you have free time, what do you do for fun?
Um, I play piano. I go running. I've been training for the same 5K run for the last 5 years, and I keep getting injured. So I'm going to continue until I can do it. I'm also I've done martial arts for many years. I've got blue belt in karate. I'd like to get my black belt one day. And just different things I like to try. Like I would love to learn horseback riding, and I like hiking in the woods, and just anything to do with being outside in nature.
Okay. Well, you're certainly in a place with a lot of nature. There's no doubt about that.
Mm.
Okay, we're getting here toward the end of the show. We got 3 or 4 minutes left. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to let the world know how can they get your books? Where can they buy them at? Are you doing any signings coming up? Any speaking opportunities? So I'm going to turn it over to you. Let you tell the world about J.M. Shaw and her books. Okay.
All right, thank you. So I have a website. It's www.jmshawauthor.com. And there's links to all of my books on Amazon, amazon.com, as well as amazon.ca. I will be putting my Kobo and Barnes & Noble links on there as well soon. And there's an events page that'll tell you where I'm going to be in the future. I'm going to be wrapping up. I think I've got 2 more weekends of book signings coming up in the Calgary area. And then I will be wrapping up for the rest of the year. Our roads get very icy, so it's difficult to travel. But I will be starting up again next year. Early next year in the spring, and you can follow me on social media. I am on Instagram and Facebook. There are links on the bottom of my website to find links to that. I've also got an email and the bottom of the website.
Okay. Have you had people email you or contact you via social media, say, I love this character. What about this? I mean, people are just so full of ideas. Sometimes they want to share them, whether we want to accept them or not. They're willing to share. Do you have much of that kind of activity?
Yeah, I've had some interesting questions come through. I had somebody ask me if the town in one of my books was Hamilton in Ontario, or Hamilton, or one of the cities there. And there was another one that asked me if it was a place in Manitoba. But I also had somebody ask me if my little fairy in my first book, her name is Frey, if she's left-handed, which was was the oddest question. I had to stop and think about that one. I've had questions about the relationships between my two characters, if they'll develop, if there's a romance in the future, if there's, what else I might be writing and such. But I've also had people asking me about my writing process and about how I became published too.
Okay, so maybe a magical romance in the future. Who knows?
Yes. Well, just stay tuned for my fourth book.
Or the romance may develop into the sixth book. You never know. But anyway, yeah. Jennifer, it has been so nice chatting with you today. I wish you the absolute very best in the continuation. And on the USA Global and TV and Radio Network, there are a lot of shows, I think over 50 available for people. And please take a look at what's there, because there might be something else that you can share your books and knowledge with, and we'd love to have you there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and start shutting down and telling people about the next show coming up. And again, thank you so very much, Jennifer. Really enjoyed our chat today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Good luck there, Jennifer. red.olaughlin here. And the next show coming up is called Talking Heads. I've been putting on a program for the last probably 4 weeks about getting into healthy habits for 2025 starting today. Essentially, we're looking at the last 3 months of the year to develop habits that will benefit you for next year. Don't wait till January 1st to come up with a resolution and start doing something that you've done before and didn't work. Now, all of a sudden, why not just take and start doing it now? The January rolls around, you're already involved for 2 or 4 or 6 weeks, and you've had success, and it just keeps on going, as opposed to getting till the middle of January, things aren't working out so well, and boom, anyway. So that's what we talked about. Most everything up to this point in time has been on mindset. How do I get my mind wrapped around what I need to do in order to be successful next year? Because our subconscious mind is one it's difficult to understand, but it's very, very simple. And one of the simplest things to understand about our minds is the fact that our subconscious mind controls 95% of everything we do, but it cannot tell the difference between real and imagined. So if you have real success, great. But if you have a fair amount of failure, your subconscious mind is going to protect you from future failure. But if you take the imaginary successes that you can come up with on a daily basis and add extra emotion to it, all of a sudden the scales begin to balance between success and failure, and your brain cannot tell the difference, your subconscious mind, and actually at that point in time stops thwarting you in your success. So from that perspective, going to sign off on the wise ones here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, and literally in about 20 minutes or so, we're going to be doing Talking Heads today, and we're continuing on with the dashboard of how can I put the things together so I can see them and use them for 2025. With that, take care, y'all, and we will catch you shortly. Bye now.